My name is Xavier Zuccon, and behind me here is my 1983 Toyota Sprinter Torino. I've always been into racing, sports cars and rally cars of the 50s, 60s and 70s. That's kind of my era of interest. Driving an AE86, it shocked me. Coming from driving a Lancia Monte Carlo from 1978, this car's 1983, so it's not that much older, but in terms of the technology that's in the car, in comparison to the Monte Carlo, it's night and day. It was just so smooth. And once you get above 4.5, 5,000 RPM, it really kicks in, because obviously in a naturally aspirated engine car, you've got to be in the top kind of rev range to get the most out of the engine and the most power. But it's incredibly comfortable, everything's ergonomic, it's dynamically fantastic, and it's a car that I honestly think, despite our hot summers here, you could drive from here to Melbourne or something and it'd be comfortable, you don't break a sweat. Heeling and towing is wonderful. The pedals are just nicely spaced apart. And at the end of the day, it's very special. You're in an 86, and for me, that means everything. Well, I think it was my 12th or 11th birthday, my mum gave me a Initial D DVD. Initial D was a manga and an anime in the late 90s that was released in Japan, and it centers around a character called Takumi Fujiwara, and he essentially delivers tofu for his dad to a hotel up on the top of Mount Okina. Every morning he'd do the deliveries and he'd go up there and he'd come back down in an 86, and so he eventually got into racing, was really, really good at it, and so he was beating much more powerful cars, RX-7s, R32s, you name it. Watching that really connected with me, a kind of young kid who was a fantastic driver, and he didn't need the most powerful car in the world to win races. And whether or not that might be true in real life didn't really matter to me as a kid. All right, so the stat rollout for the 86, it has a 1.6 litre inline-4, 4A GE. 4A is the fourth revision of the A block, so it produces about 120, 125 horsepower on the high end. It revs to around about 7,200. I haven't quite taken it up there yet. It has a 5-speed manual, the T50 transmission. It has McPherson strut suspension up the front. It has a live rear beam axle at the back, so no independent at the back, so it's pretty low key in terms of the rear suspension, nothing independent at the rear. So this is a GT Apex, which is the top of the line kind of trim level car that you could get for the time. The differences here on this car is just kind of the front lip design. The color that comes around just underneath the headlights is a plastic, it's kind of a dark color, whilst in the later cars it was body color that came around the front there. There's a lot of little quirks to the car which are quite nice, having obviously it's a Japanese spec car. This is the first time that I've ever driven and owned a car with pop-up headlights. It's a big craze, I find, and you kind of turn the dial there to pop the lights up, and they take a few seconds and they pop straight up. Their toll system over there, just like we have the RMS little toll thing on our windscreen, they have one too, and it's a kind of rectangular prism box. And every time you turn the key and you turn the car on, it spits out this little Japanese sound like. And so apparently it says, card is missing or something like that. And so every time I turn the car on, I'm just reminded of, this is a Japanese car, it's from Japan. Everything about it, from the digital dash. A digital dash back in 1983, that's a pretty rare occurrence. Cars today don't have digital dashes. And it's this wonderful little F1 styled almost dash where it kind of, revs up and, it kind of goes orange and red as you get to the red line. And the fuel and temperature gauges are both fully electronic, which is just amazing. Think 1983, I find that mind-blowing. So in terms of modifications and future plans for this car, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop on a pair of Watanabe rims, which are the rims that Takumi had. I'm going to carbon wrap the bonnet, I'm going to pop in a bucket seat, I'm going to change the steering wheel, and I'm going to get a completely new suspension set up from Shockwork down in Victoria. And so that'll just make the car handle fantastically, because the stock suspension is quite soft at the moment, as you can imagine, 40 years old. And so I'm going to keep it just purely aesthetics and just to my kind of taste. I couldn't be happier with my 86, and I've been waiting to say those words for a very long time. So yeah.